I got to throw this out here too. It's been leaked out. The three teams that would be the permanent opponent for Alabama. And part of it was Nick Saban mentioned it. And honestly, I don't blame him for saying what he said about Alabama having to play Auburn, Tennessee, and LSU every year. And then you look at the rest of the teams, and every other team has that soft opponent. Like I thought it would be Auburn, Tennessee, and Mississippi State. I figured that LSU would be the one that they took out of that. And, Coach Brian Kelly's like, hey, we want to play the best. Yeah, well, you're playing Ole Miss every year. And you know what? Right. Believe it or not, like Ole Miss might be good now, but they're not good consistently. They're not a historically good program. That's a win pretty much every year for your team. And Alabama doesn't have that. I know they had that long winning streak against Tennessee, but those days are over. Tennessee's got all those resources. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, me and Coach Saban were really upset about it. And hey, if I'm agreeing with Coach Saban, I'm probably in really good company in terms of who knows what's best for our program. I do think the scheduling is really complicated, but it can be made easy when you think of it like this, Mick. Is that there's 16 teams now. You could say that roughly 5 of the up to maybe 10 of the teams are halves and about 6 are have-nots. Now that's all relative because it's the SEC, right? We're not the MAC, we're not the WAC. I mean, it's the SEC. Everybody's pretty good, but I think there's a way to do it, Mick, where every team in the league plays 2 halves and 1 have-not. And when you break down like the great work from Ross Dellinger, who's done a lot of great work from Sports Illustrated on this, when you break down what Ross's best guess or what his best information is, it appears that everybody in the league pretty much is playing 2 halves and 1 have-not, except a couple of teams. Tennessee's playing 2 have-nots. Yeah. Nobody else gets to do that. No. Nobody else gets to do that.
What a joke.
For some reason, they have 2 have-nots.
Right.
And Alabama's got 3 halves.
I know.
And it's inequitable. And when I've read some comments, and I think people are sort of missing this point when they say, yeah, but Alabama plays Auburn, Tennessee, and LSU every year right now. Why is everybody upset? We already play those teams. Well, that's because it was an old format. That's under the old format. The whole format for scheduling is changing. Under the old format, it treated Alabama really fairly. We played 1 team from the East every year. Everybody else in the West plays a whole West schedule. It treats everybody in the West as treated the same. You play 1 team from the East. Yeah, Alabama was playing a traditional strong opponent, but you know who else was? Auburn played Georgia. LSU played Florida.
Yep.
Didn't really make much of a difference to Alabama that Ole Miss got Vanderbilt every year because let's be honest, we're not really competing with Ole Miss to win the SEC every single season. But we were competing with LSU and Auburn, and they had a tough opponent in the East too. The old format was fair to everyone, including Alabama. This new format, it can be fair to everyone, but in the initial draft that I saw, it was not fair at all to Alabama, was fair to everyone else. And for whatever reason, Tennessee had the easiest schedule out there. It's like as if this whole plan must have come from Josh Heupel's desk.
I felt the same way. And look, it matters. It absolutely matters. Okay.
Yes.
If Georgia would have played the schedule that Alabama played last year, they would not have went undefeated. And I don't even know if they would have made the college football playoff. If you had switched Alabama with Georgia and those schedules. And so that's why in the NFL, they work so hard to make the schedule equity, right? They do that because it matters, and if you lose a couple of games, it matters. And so there was a year 2010, Jimmy, where the SEC did the same thing to Alabama, except what they did was they let every single opponent in the conference have a week off before they played Alabama. Do you remember that?
Right. I do. That was
and guess what happened?
It wasn't
then
fair.
They lost some games because of it. So if you're Nick Saban, if you're Alabama, you better stand up and say, hey, this isn't going to work. When you look, not only the fact that Alabama's playing these 3 really tough opponents, and like you said, not having the one that's not in that group, No one else is even close to that. And one of our arch rivals and a team that's going to be around for a long time, Tennessee, is playing a soft schedule. When you put South Carolina and Vanderbilt in there every single year for them, it just does not match up to what we're looking at in Alabama. So I'm sure that there's going to be a discussion. And if I'm Nick Saban in Alabama, I'm not doing this. I'm going to put my foot down.
And that's why I think he came out. I mean, Nick Saban was the first to blurt out, hey, this is their plan and this is what they're doing to us, because Nick Saban was extremely unhappy with it. That's why he, quote, leaked it out himself, because he's trying to get ahead of it. He's trying to say, hey, this is what they're talking about doing to us, and we don't want to do it. And yeah, the schedule is everything, Mick. And like you said, I agree with you that had Georgia played Alabama's schedule, no slight to Georgia, it's not like they didn't deserve their national title. Of course they did. But had Georgia played Tennessee on the road, had Georgia played LSU on the road, they might lose both of those games, if not one of them. If you're playing a tough schedule, you're going to play some of them on the road. That's where seasons go to die. The great college football historian Bino Cook, I mean, famous for saying, hey, Germany lost World War II because they played Russia on the road. You play somebody tough in their place. It's not going to go good all the time. Yeah. And Alabama's toughest games last year were all on the road, and it was just going to be extremely difficult to overcome that. It would have been very difficult for Georgia to overcome it. And quickly, I'll say this: it's a little bit more hypothetical. Michigan and TCU both made the playoff, rightfully so. Ohio State made the playoff with a loss. But let's just say Michigan, who was undefeated, I'm not saying they didn't deserve being in the playoff. Of course they did. Undefeated Big Ten champ. Of course they deserved it. TCU, maybe a different story, but I'll say this and ask, would Michigan and TCU have beaten Tennessee at Tennessee? Would they have beaten LSU in Baton Rouge? Probably not. Probably not. So the schedule, it doesn't just matter, Mick. The schedule means everything.
Yeah, look, I'll put it like this. I stole this from Ben Ingram, but he's exactly right. If TCU would have played Alabama's schedule, if they would have been in the SEC, they would have been playing in the Cheez-It Bowl. Yeah. And would have been happy about it. Look,
I don't disagree.
I mean, come on. You go play those 5 teams back to back to back the way that schedule rolled out, and then have to play the other teams at home. That's why this really matters. So hopefully when it's all said and done, that things will be, like you said, it'll be equal throughout the entire conference.
These conferences matter. The Big 12, the TCU fans will get upset, Mick, about me and you saying that and agreeing that TCU was a 7-5, 8-4 football team in the SEC, and TCU fans be, what are you talking about? That's crazy. Oh, the Big 12 is unquestionably the best basketball conference this year. Unquestionably, the Big 12 is best. Oklahoma is nearly in last place in the Big 12, and they beat Alabama, the SEC conference champ. So I'm sure the Big 12 fans understand when I say, hey, you know what? If Alabama was in the Big 12, they might not have won that league. They couldn't even beat nearly last place Oklahoma. Imagine playing, 9 road games in that league.
Yeah.
In basketball. So I'm sure they understand that concept, that the SEC champ or a good SEC team would struggle to get to 9-9 in that conference this year. If they get that, then they should get why TCU would struggle to win SEC road football games.
Hey, what's good, fam? It's Kyle Henderson. Thank you very much for watching this video. Check out our other related content right here on Bama Insider. Be sure and like and subscribe, inching closer to 100,000 subscribers right here on Bama Insider.